we understand that people are frustrated and, they're very concerned, obviously, about what's going on in Gaza. They're concerned about what's going on just in the Middle East in general and in Europe. And yet there's this disconnect in terms of it's our tax dollars. Well, listen, I love for our tax dollars for us to have a say in them, but that's not how spending works. And yet it seems so common sense that it's like, no, the Fed, they print the money and they send it and then we get taxed. Why is that disconnect still something that you think is so prevalent for so many people?
Because Nina Turner won't stop saying it. I don't know. I
still love you,
know,
Nina,
I think that it's just hard to believe that you're giving the government your money and they're shredding it. I think the idea that they need your money because they don't really understand why they need your money. If taxes don't pay for things, why do I have to pay taxes? What's the deal, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like one of those weird buy-ins, right? They need my money so that I need their money is really what it comes down to. Okay. They need to implement an obligation that makes me have to have their money. And it makes me have to do something to get their money. Because the issue isn't a lack of income. The issue is they want to be able to provision or do things. And that means they need people. That means they need equipment and, services and raw materials and whatever. So in order to drive our behavior to do a thing, they issue a tax. And it's counterintuitive, and people that haven't given it 5 seconds of thought will think, hey, let me just go toe to toe and say he's wrong. But it is what it is. And once you realize that, the government had to spend money into the world for them to be able to collect the tax and the money that they create from the world. And this brings up the next beast and all that. And that's the big lies that we've been told that banks finance our federal government. And worse, the LOL libertarians of the world think that the private Federal Reserve owns the government and we're in debt to the Rothschilds and, what else. So it's spicy, it's titillating, gives them something to talk about while they're drinking, beers at Burning Man or whatever it is that they do.
Moonshine.
And
I can't forget
ultimately it's just garbage, but it sticks because garbage sticks and truth is like boring and just sort of veers off out of the memory zone. I gotta tell you, I'm so proud of you, Jen, because I have noticed in spades, not only in text message, but indeed, Katie Halper, I believe you broke down a little bit of a federal job guarantee and stuff. So
I'm doing the best I can.
Let me say, there is hope because when we first started our little Texas two-step, I remember your eyes had toothpicks in them, and you would sit there, and it was like
I try to understand it.
Eyes. You're like, oh my God, he's talking. I hear peanuts going wah, 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 wah. And that isn't the way it is anymore. I mean, you basically spit it back at me. And I was like, holy crap, maybe I didn't waste my time.
No,
you really got it.
No, you did.
I was so happy.
No, you're the shit, man. And I'll tell you, it's funny. I find myself very often on different things or having guests. And I'll say, okay, well, I agree with you, except for really our tax dollars don't pay for anything. And I go through the whole thing. And there have even been times where I'm like, Steve would be so proud of me.
And you have people come to me and they say, I don't know if you saw this interview, and chances are, truth be told, I didn't, right. But Jen was knocking it out of the park. And I'm like, was she talking about weed? They're like, no, she was talking MMT. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So that does touch the old rogue scholar in the heart. So.
Yeah. Well, I told you a while ago that I was going to come out with federal job guarantee, that I really think that's the thing to do. So we're healthcare, housing, and jobs. And basically, I mean, the whole issue statement, I'm such a dork. I actually wrote our issue statements according to like the preamble. So like establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, go through it. And then under promote the general welfare is 21st century economic bill of rights. And I even got like Harvey's okay to like put his little like link in there and all this stuff. So no, why would I not do what makes the most sense?
You know what? I got to tell you, you're swimming upstream with this. That's the problem.
I know.
And that's why people run away from it, right?
I know. But that's why someone has to put it out there. Like I figure, look, 10 years ago, we were not all talking Medicare for all, or at least it wasn't, what it was once Bernie came in. And I feel like, okay, so now we have Medicare for all. Everyone understands that we have a serious housing problem. So maybe now would be the time to sort of just plant that little federal job guarantee, right? Like just sort of put that out there and just promote. And then, I don't expect that if I get elected, I'm getting a federal job guarantee put through, but it's got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, some of the questions that all these kinds of policy proposals, prescriptions bring out, it's beyond a meme. And that's the problem, right? It's beyond a meme. And so because it's beyond a meme and it doesn't fit neatly in a 30-second TikTok, it's challenging because you're dealing with short-term, very, very click forward, scroll, swipe right, whatever it is, very, very transactional minds that aren't really into consuming information. They're into rapid, just, okay, I got enough of that, moving on. Yeah, I think I got that, moving on. So you're up against it. I mean, if you look back a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, I should say, John Yarmouth, who had retired from the Congress, was talking to Congress, and literally he was a lone voice that was basically getting shouted down and ignored, but he held his ground. He said what he had to say, but that's what you're up against. And I think it's a shame. And I think, the unforced errors, and I'm just going to put it out there. Sorry, Nina.
Yeah.
But Nina lives and dies with talking about your hard-earned tax dollars, and I don't want my tax dollars. And she's really, really punting the progressive movement right in the junk sack every time she does it. She's got a big platform. She's got the opportunity, and she was part of Sanders Institute, knows Kelton, and still triples down. She knows Cobb Burbank and the rest of the brown elite from, Princeton, et cetera, and she still doesn't. So you're up against such a brick wall with this. And it's because they don't understand what not doing it correctly does to every policy prescription they would ever want. And this is why none of them, literally none of them, put forward any kind of policy proposals during a legislative season where they have a chance to actually enact it. They do it when there's no chance, when they're out of power, and they'll float these really grandiose ideas. But the minute they recapture it, they go back to being conservatives and do nothing.
Yeah.
So that brings up a lot of other questions that we can talk about. But I just,
when we first shout out to Noor, I got to shout out to this woman. I honestly, I see you. I am broken for you. So with so much love. And I honestly,
Colin,
I'm so appreciative.
Colin, do me a favor. Grab the clip from Wasserman Schultz from CNN this morning if you got a chance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve. Like this is the first time I've ever had anybody watching from Gaza, like or at least that said so.
There's a lot of people from Gaza following you.
That's fine. They might be following, but this is the first time somebody's commented in my chat, and it's like I'm lost.
Well,
I don't even know what to say.
Well, again, and that gets back to the whole issue of the privileged nature. And remember, she's doing this in the middle of the night.
I know. No, is it? No, it isn't.
Yeah.
No, they're like 8 hours. Yeah. Okay. So it's early. It's early.
It's middle of the night.
Okay.
So anyway, I don't think necessarily it's Nina's intention to, make the mistake, but I also think that people have a propensity to just repeat what's the common consensus, even if they know. Well, listen. You want to talk about leaders? This is the leader of Broward County, Florida. This was on CNN this morning.
Horrific.
Oh, boy.
But there is a way out of the war where Hamas needs to accept the deal that's on the table. Israel and the United States and Hamas representatives and Qatar, they've been negotiating over how we can get to a ceasefire, and Hamas needs to accept that deal and release the hostages and save their own people who they have subjected to this war.
Who they haven't built shelters for, but built tunnels instead.
And using as human shields.
I don't give a
She is the most
listen, you know
disgusting
what
human being.
she is. She's a revolting, disgusting shit. But here's the problem. I'm not as mad at Wasserman Schultz as I am at that. I don't give a flying F who the hell that CNN anchor is, but that CNN anchor played right into that shit. Oh, and remember what they're saying over there. You know what they're doing to these people. And yet every time you open your mouth and you say shit like that is another child getting blown to bits right now, because that's what's happening.
No, but I know what a human shield is because I was one. That's the thing, Debbie. Israel uses human shields. That's what they do when they take teenagers into places they ought not be, to plant trees in people's land that they don't own. So that's a human shield. I can't even. Like, the fact that I'm running prohibits me from saying certain things, but like, I just can't.
Yeah, you got to bite your tongue. But at the end of the day, that's why getting this message out there is very important. And that's why the whole, you can have, a foreign policy mission, which is important, because I think that most of our, whether it's a congressional delegation, our president, that's a whole other story, are very ignorant about these foreign policy circumstances in terms of what needs to be done and what can be done. But the domestic side of our economics, and when I constantly hear people say that our president is the most progressive president of their lifetime, and he's doing this and he's doing that, and I have said time and again that when it comes to the economics of this presidency, when he said within the first 100 days that we cannot pass a $15 minimum wage because the parliamentarian says we can't do it, that was the end of his presidency. There was nothing that was redeemable at that point. You had to know what was coming. You had to know that austerity politics is alive and well, and when it's painted with a nice, beautiful, broad brush by the liberal establishment, it makes it better because they're not hurting your feelings the way that Trump does.
I would do anything to help you, Nor.
Jen, stop staring.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I think it would be prudent to get people to understand that Jen's candidacy is so essential for the mission of people becoming economically literate, which the overwhelming majority of this country, as you know, isn't. And I have to consult with people constantly about what they know and don't know about economics. I know a lot, and I still don't know a lot. That's the whole point. And that's why the message of what modern monetary theory really is all about is understanding how this thing works. Jon Stewart, he came real close, didn't come close enough, but I don't think we're that far off. And I think with somebody like Jen, if she had that platform, I think that narrative at the federal level would change considerably.
Well, when people ask difficult questions, I'm like, please call my friend Steve. There you go. That's the thing. I'm good up until a certain point. Then they start talking inflation, and then I'm like, oh. And I know it's crap what they're saying. Like, I know that, but I'm not necessarily so great at explaining how I know that and why. That's basically what it is. I was having this argument with my 23-year-old. He's like, yes, but if you do that, then inflation. I'm like, yeah, but that's not how this works. But you know what I'm saying.
So, just for shits and grins, the government prints $1 trillion out of thin air, prints it. They don't print, guys, gals, they don't print money. Right. It doesn't work that way. But just let's go the Dollarati way, and we'll just say, hey, they printed $1 trillion and they put it up on the moon. There's no inflation. They printed $1 trillion.
Right.
Okay. If I give $1 trillion to one person and they buy, I don't know, maybe they buy a lot of refrigerators. Maybe they buy a bunch of cars. Maybe they even buy some houses or whatever. And maybe they jack the prices up by gentrifier. I don't know. But the reality is that the actual printing of money, which doesn't happen, but since people are just as Nina's ridiculously wedded to the tax dollar, people are ridiculously wedded to saying the incorrect thing, saying they printed money. It didn't create inflation. The only way that inflation happens is twofold. Number one, the government itself, when it spends, because it spends money on something, when a government says, we're going to go ahead and bomb the hell out of Gaza, we need to go ahead and get weapons to send to Israel to kill a lot of people, the government sends checks to Halliburton and whoever else builds those weapon systems. That they create brand new money and they send them a check. That's how new money gets into the economy. They get the first crack at that dollar, and then they pay their employees whatever pittance they pay them, and it trickles out into the economy. That's how money gets into the economy. Otherwise, you and I, we're running out of money. What do? We go to the bank or we go to some credit card and we take out a loan. That's not money the way the government spent money. That is IOU. It's a debt. And so what happens is that money comes into existence. You pay the whatever you owe, and the bank keeps the interest. That's it. The rest of the money zeroes out because the government gave them a specific charter to allow them to create loans. Banks, even though they don't behave as public, are in fact already public banks with just shitty private sector tendencies because they've been allowed to be that way. Okay. But banks have a charter from the government to use the government's unit of account, the dollar, to give loans out. So when they talk about inflation, there's no magic pricing fairy that exists that drives prices up. It's some fat slob with a big cigar in a dark room saying, let's jack these prices up. And we talked about this before when it was talking about the 4 Ps of marketing. They always find their price point. And Isabella Weber, I think I spoke about this last time as well. She has gone out of her way to do incredible work to show that the vast majority of the inflation that we've seen is what they call seller's inflation. In other words, because they know a lot of people randomly say they printed money, and because we know that that's like a whistle, like talking about that guy Horton, who they released from prison back in the day. You remember that whole baiting to dropping the dirty shit into the water to poison everybody's mind. You remember when I think it was Dukakis had let somebody out. It was Willie Horton, I think it was, and he went and killed someone. That was the dog whistle. To say blacks are all criminals and so forth. Well, it's the same exact thing, except they use the word printing money. And once they issue that flash, business says, the idiots out there are going to think that this is inflationary, so let's not prove them wrong. Let's go ahead and raise rates, because there's literally nothing that creates higher prices other than somebody saying, I'm going to go ahead and get some more money. Okay. So because we're so poorly trained in this field of study, we blame the government for quote unquote printing money. But in reality, what's happening is somebody has to do something to get that money. It's work. So work is being paid at a going rate, whatever work equals, whatever the bid, whatever the contract that the government signed with them. So that's what the government has stepped up to. And that's literally how money gets out there. But one big thing happened during this whole crisis. The Federal Reserve, in conjunction with the Treasury and so forth, decided they were going to go ahead and raise interest rates because they're going to stop inflation by raising interest rates. Now, what that is attempting to do is to create very, very hard times that create people to make them stop buying things, which then in turn will bring about a recession, which will then turn around and bring about layoffs, which will then simultaneously be the blunt force trauma that quote unquote brings down inflation because people don't have money. So now you got to lower prices instead of just saying you will lower prices or we will put price controls on you. Okay. Instead of doing that, they'll make the little people suffer immensely for the price gouging. Okay. It's amazing how many people out there lick the boot of capital and literally swaddle up and snuggle capital and point down at the poors and blame them for the problems. And so what you're dealing with is a very much a meritocracy based in the libertarian Ayn Rand makers and takers mindset that has poisoned and polluted and destroyed our country worse than any other mindset in the world. Nothing comes close.